Hey, hi, hello, hey, welcome back to another episode of Trick Chat, a podcast brought to you by Trick on the Tube. I am your unchanging host, Sean, until we find a replacement, someone that does this podcast better than me. I'm joined today by two very special guests, returning guests, Ketwolski. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing fine. And first time guest, the Trick Collector. How are you?
Hey, not too bad, buddy. Thanks for having me on again.
Oh, well, no problem.
Well, first time on, but
First
we've
time
chatted
on.
many a times, and we did a recent podcast there with Nick as well, which was very, very cool.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
it's great to have you on here. Yeah, thank you guys so much for coming. Today is a topic that I've kind of sort of addressed, like in maybe two direct messages with Ketwolski here. It was more of a question on my part, and then I thought, hey, we can make a discussion about this. Video on demand movies, right? The industry is changing. The industry is evolving, and Star Trek has found itself recently released on video on demand streaming services, be it CBS All Access in the United States, what is it, Crave in Canada, and Netflix across the world, or Amazon Prime.
Right.
So Star Trek Picard and Star Trek Discovery, and then the short treks, I think, are kind of limited sort of to the US at this point, or Canada. There's been talks and rumors about this Star Trek Discovery movie that might be happening. And if it does happen, it might be a streaming or video on demand exclusive. So I wanted to know what you guys thought about that, what everyone thinks about this. Because in my mind, up until recently, video on demand movies kind of felt like TV movies in a sense. And not to put down TV movies, but in the past, TV movies have kind of been, they've not been theatrical release movies. They've been, the Disney kind of sequels, or TV movies were another thing, right? So what do you guys think about this?
Ooh, well,
Is it a step back, first of all, or is it good, or is it just a natural evolution?
I think it's a cheap cop out. I think when you look at Star Trek for years, you had the TV series, then you had the movie, and I think the original cast did the movies really, really well. I know the evens were the best ones; the odds seem to fall flat. But to me, I just do think it is a bit of a sellout. And I think the one sci-fi series they can really look back to is Stargate SG-1 and the two movies that they released to finish off season 10. I think, and funny enough, I just actually watched the last Stargate SG-1 episode there today, and it just missed that finale for a TV show and to move on to a movie. And I just thought they were okay, but it was just like an extended TV version of the show as opposed to a big production.
Yeah, I would say so. I agree with what you're saying in regards to Stargate for sure. Those movies were right. They were basically good two-parter episodes, which Star Trek, some of the TNG movies did feel like that. I think Insurrection has been referenced as that way quite a bit, and Generations in some regards as well have been referenced as they felt more of like longer episodes of television than they did theatrical releases, because it's a different product, it's a different thing altogether. I mean, we all know that, a theatrical release. But I would put forth that this particular production team that they have right now has attempted to push the envelope with television, these television shows, Picard and Discovery and the short treks, to being much more theatrical in nature. So I think if they were to go the movie route, I think they would have an easier time making the transition to something more of a theatrical release. I don't think it would be as TV show movie as like the Stargate ones were, but I don't necessarily know if they would be full on great theatrical releases, but I think they would be better, if that makes sense.
And that's actually another great point because, yeah, if you look at Stargate, they just kind of went kind of like TV style, but as you said there, with like especially Discovery is the one that really they have pushed the boundaries.
Yeah.
It does look more cinematic, and that is actually a very good point to consider with Discovery, actually.
Alex Kurtzman right now, if he's listening to this, is smiling from ear to ear. I'm gonna interrupt you just for a second. I just finished watching all of the bonus content that's on the physical release for Star Trek Discovery Season 2. And a theme or something that Alex Kurtzman has been saying throughout the entire behind the scenes is he really tried to make, especially the finale of season 2 and the first episode of season 2, he really tried to make them as cinematic as possible, and he keeps on saying that he's really trying to make it seem like it's a movie. So if he's listening to you saying this, he's loving it because he's happy that he's succeeded.
I mean, I think that they have. I think they've done a good job at. I think it's been a noticeable effort to make it not just even lighting, everyone's standing around, it's the backdrop of the set, and everyone's facing one direction. You know, I think that they've attempted to create
Like
a
the
more
Nen.
dramatic element to the shows, which I genuinely appreciate. The fact that they're at least trying, like when you compare the cinematography of, you know, and here we go already, the Orville to Discovery, these are two wildly different
Oh, how dare he?
productions.
And that's
you know?
that's spot on. The Orville is kind of like literally, you know, the next generation continued on.
Well, it's
Right.
it's
With
90s TV
intention.
today.
It's
And-
it's an intentional continuation, but
Yeah,
yeah.
and there's nothing wrong with that.
Right,
And
right.
absolutely, like the cinematic approach. I think I don't know if any of you stayed up and seen Jonathan Frakes doing his commentary through First Contact, and you can kind of see, like, for the likes of Jonathan Frakes from doing, like, say, TNG directing to working on Discovery, and he referenced that the Discovery Bridge was absolutely fantastic for directing. It's one of the best that he's kind of worked on. For the likes of him to, like, you know, it's more of a movie production as opposed to a TV production is all great things. And do I want to give Alex Kurtzman too much of a praise? Like, I like this approach, I do like it, but I do think one thing that is lacking is a little bit more science as opposed to the fiction element. You know what I mean? I think
Yeah.
Star Trek was always engrossed with science, and I do think that is lacking a bit from Discovery, but
Did
mainly
you just
from Picard.
finish watching my Mandalorian versus Picard review?
No, but I like
That was the point I made, though. I made the same point.
Yeah, and you know,
The
absolutely,
irony
the
of
Mandalorian
it's the power of math.
is absolutely, that's a prime example. Like Star Wars, as Damien always says, it's science fantasy. That's fine. That's the Star
Right,
Wars
right.
universe, and the great thing that they've done in Star Wars is they've kept the initial Star Wars appearance. And like, if you look at Star Trek versus Star Wars, like, Star Wars was a movie, and you had George Lucas that was just a bloody genius, and it holds up. And I can understand in this day and age that, you know, you go back, you do a prequel, you have to make it look appealing. I don't mind some of the visuals changing one bit whatsoever, because as we've all just agreed pretty much that it's really cinematic, it's fantastic. But I do think Star Trek is missing a lot of science, which would be cool.
I agree. I think the execution is what the flaw is. I think the idea is that they laid out on the table in regards to how they wanted to shoot it, the way they wanted to shoot it, and this. I mean, people are going to give people a lot of flack, and there are questionable editing choices, I think, with the content that was filmed. But overall, every episode, I think, of Discovery and of Picard have been with the intention of trying to be as high as quality as they could possibly get it, you know, maximizing that dollar as much as they possibly could in a lot of areas, especially the first season of Discovery, which I still think probably had the biggest budget out of all of them. And as dog shit as the writing is in that season, it's really well made. It's just the way that it was, the final product was underwhelming. But right, like, so if they were to take that style and apply it, you know, to a streaming on-demand film, I think it would be something that would be definitely worth watching. Do I agree? I agree with you, Chris, in some regard that it is a bit of a cop-out, right? Do I think it's a natural progression of the industry that we will be going to more streaming-style movies? I think I don't know if you guys saw that whole situation that's going on with Universal versus the movie theaters right now, but that does seem to be something going on. I think it's a natural progression, but it is a little bit of a cop-out because I think it's a safer bet to just release it through streaming than it is to basically go trial by fire now, which is what it is, and
I
send
feel
your
like
movie
they
out
make
to
less
box
money
office.
doing that, though.
You say what?
Actually, I'll tell you what. I say I feel like they'll make less money, but that's because I'm basing I'm basing this off a Disney release, or like a Marvel Cinematic Universe release, or a Fast and Furious release. Star Trek doesn't make that kind of money. And I will say it's maybe the fault of Paramount or the fault of CBS for not knowing how to use Star Trek correctly. But the fact is, Star Trek has never made $1 billion or more. And so maybe they think that it'll just be easier to release it on a streaming platform.
You have a great point there, but the funny thing is, if you look at Star Trek through the movies in history, the more a Star Trek movie has been given, the worse it has been. The less and the tighter the budget it's been given.
I think that applies to most science fiction, actually.
True, but like if you look at the Star Trek, the initial original cast, and even with say Generations, you know what I mean, that was highly, like, there was a lot more of a budget in Generations than First Contact, and they were tightening the noose on First Contact, and you get First Contact, which is leaps and bounds, and it was the same with the Rat Can. I think there just has to be, you just need to put the right people in charge, and make sure that you have a decent story. And I think that's, you can see it with the initial Star Trek movies throughout the whole franchise, that, you know what I mean, once there was a concept of a great storyline there, it worked. It wasn't too much about big visuals. I think it's a content. For a Star Trek fan, you want a good story that makes sense. And it's just funny that the ones that had the least amount of money did better than the ones that had money thrown at it. But I think if you look at it, where you go with a streaming service and where you go with the cinemas, and it is changeable. Like, there's nothing to say that, like, if you're signed up for CBS All Access and they want to release a new Star Trek Discovery movie, that they can't release it in the cinema and also release it at the same time on CBS All Access, and you just have to pay an additional fee to say like $10 to see the Star Trek Discovery movie, or else you can go see it in your cinema. And I think 9 times out of 10 most fans will actually prefer to go and see it in the movies. Now, to me, I'd actually like to have that option though as well. Like, if I was signed up, say it came on Netflix and I had to pay €10 to see it at home first and watch it in the comfort of my own home and say, geez, this is great, I want to see it on the big screen, I'd probably still go to the cinema and watch it then. So it's a funny one.
Yeah, but see, the thing is they're not targeting people like us who love Star Trek so much that we would make those decisions to say, I'm going to go see this twice. I'm going to pay to see it at the house, or I'll pay to see it at the theaters, and I'll probably watch it in both locations. They're not thinking necessarily about us because they're really more concerned with that money that they got. And I kind of talked a little bit about this in my Mandalorian thing, which is those new fans. The fans that join that new fan faction of people that are just joining on and getting that new fan money from. And that's what happened with like Star Trek 2009 is that movie, although it wasn't, I think we can all agree it lacked a lot of the elements of a Trek-style film. It was definitely a different take, for sure, hands down. But it brought in a lot more money because
I think it's one of ironically, I think it's one of the Star Trek movies that ages the best.
It's a really great movie in terms of its cinematic capabilities. Like, it holds up. It's got a lot of good action to it, and it is a fun movie to watch. J.J. Abrams can't write for shit, but he can definitely make an action movie that is engaging and enjoyable.
I think he purposefully uses shortcuts. I think he could write better if he tried.
Yeah, but I mean, ultimately, he doesn't need to because he makes more money than most directors, I think, right now, and he's got a winning formula, so why change it? So for him, it's great, But that's why I say, like, it's. I think that if they do go the route of let's release this through streaming, I think they may, in my personal opinion, I think that, like, if they were to do a Discovery movie or make Pike a Pike film, right? If they didn't make a Pike series and they did a Pike film, just throwing an idea out there, I think that they would feel like it would be a safer bet to release it through streaming and then gauge people's reactions based off of that. And the reason I say that is, 2009 did really good and it really energized those new fans into the franchise, even though it made a lot of the older fans upset. But then Into Darkness came out and then people were like, I don't know about that one. And then Beyond ultimately didn't really pay off very well at all. So I don't think that they're feeling very confident in a massive global theatrical release just yet. So I'm thinking they may test the waters with a streaming film that's a little bit smaller in scale, and then maybe they go through the route of a theatrical release based off of the feedback there.
So
And that's
sorry, go ahead.
yeah. Well, that's a great point. They're going for a new fan. I can understand that, and it's easy cash flow because you get somebody new into a franchise, and then straight away they're going to go out and buy stuff.
Right.
Which 9 times out of 10, the older fan has already bought most of the stuff.
Right.
But if you look at the likes of, and this is where it gets interesting. So 2009 for a new fan was absolutely done when you look at it in mind. And as much as I could give out about how the Enterprise appeared, and I don't ever hold that down to the designers because, I've covered this on some of my own stuff before, you know what I mean? The designers wanted to go their way, and I do think there was better concept artwork done at that ship, but they were told no. That's fine, but I think 2009 worked perfectly to get the new fan in, and then for some unknown wisdom, they decided, let's be clever. Let's kind of follow through with the old Star Trek movies, and let's bring Khan back, and they just got the story so bloody wrong.
Right.
And then you got Beyond, and to me, 2009 is great, but you look at Star Trek Beyond, and it has everything. It has something there for the old fan, and it has something there for the new fan. It was a perfect balance. The biggest tragedy with the new Star Trek movies was Into Darkness, and they were trying to be too clever. They were trying to draw in the old fan because, there was all this, is it going to be Khan, which I think they should have stayed clear of that storyline, made something similar to what they had done in 2009, or they should have just scrapped that one and just gone to the storyline like Beyond, and I wouldn't even be questioning we would have had another Star Trek movie by now.
I've said this many times before in many different podcasts where I fully believe with every fiber of my being that if Star Trek Beyond was the second Kelvin movie, I agree with you, we would have had 4 or maybe even 5 Kelvin Universe movies.
Yes.
I think if Beyond was the second one, people would have been like, okay, this is... Because they fixed a lot of the issues. Kirk acted much more like Kirk. They were much more streamlining it for the old legacy fans
All of the
and
characters
the
were
new fans.
used.
All of the characters were used appropriately. The villain was interesting. I liked it because, again, it was an okay villain, but for us legacy fans, it was cool because they tied it back to the Enterprise show, which was fun, and I liked it. I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. This is fun. I like where they're going with this. Timeline doesn't really add up yet, but I don't, it's okay. It's a movie. I'm with it. If it was the second one, it would have been much, much better. And again, I kind of put that back onto J.J. Abrams because they forced him to come back for the second one, and you could just tell he was already not in it because he had already received his offer on the back end to be the fucking director of Star Wars, which is what he wanted to begin with. So
I think the box office I genuinely believe that the good box office for 2009 generated hype for the second movie, so that's why everyone went to see Into Darkness. But when everyone came out of Into Darkness and said, "Oh well, that was trash," that impacted the box office for Beyond. Where everyone was like, "Oh well, the second one was shit. Why would we go see the third?" And I think that had a direct impact on the revenue from Beyond.
Absolutely, and that's where you lost your new fan. You
Correct.
got your diehards that will go and, regardless of
if it's
any
got
Star
Trek
Trek
written
fan
on
out there, exactly, they will watch it. You can turn around and there's a lot of people out there. I won't watch Picard. Yes, you will. I won't watch Discovery. Yes, you will. You'll watch it. You'll watch it. Even if you don't like it, you'll watch it to pull it apart. And that's what Star Trek fans are. So regardless of how bad a Star Trek movie is, you're going to see it. So, and that's the point I think that Nick was trying to make earlier on, which is absolutely spot on. 2009 was set up for a new fan, and then they decided to get too clever, and you straight away you alienated the new fan. You all of a sudden were putting your arms out. Now look, come back, all Star Trek fans. We want you. And it just, the old Star Trek fans were appalled because you destroyed probably the best Star Trek film ever. And new fans were probably left there going, what the hell is going on? So you lost half your audience straight away. And Beyond came out, and Beyond, as we've all just said, Beyond was a winner for everybody, but you lost that new audience in a heartbeat.
Yes, and that's what. So the thing I was talking about in my Mandalorian versus Picard video is, I've said that from the Kelvin universe, I discovered that ultimately there's basically 3 groups that we talk about within fandoms. Nowadays it's like legacy fans who hate the new ideas, legacy fans who love the new ideas, and new fans who don't have any of those baggages attached to their opinions, and they're just basing their judgment of a product based off of its entertainment value alone. And there's of course people that fall in between those groups, but these are like the larger groups of people, right? So with 2009, you had a large amount of people jump into that new fan faction, that new group. And then when, like you said, like when Into Darkness rolled around, most of them had been pushed into, were going to be pushed themselves into either now Legacy Hate It or Legacy Loved It fans. And a lot of people hated it, including a lot of the Legacy fans from even before 2009. So now you've pissed off the old fans, you've pissed off the new fans, and then they're like, please come back, we've made this really great movie. And again, the only people that kind of showed up for that one were the Legacy Loved It ones that were kind of holding on the hope of, well, please give me a good Star Trek movie. And then we got it, and then nobody went and saw it, and then it's like, oh shit, like, okay.
So what you're saying is if you make a shit Star Trek movie, you're going to piss off old Star Trek fans and new Star Trek fans alike.
No, I think.
Well, I mean, in a sense of because the thing is you're always going to have people that like we all know this. You're going to have people that automatically hate all of the new ideas. Period, just flat out. But as Chris just said, like
it's a passion.
Right, and as Chris said, you know, Legacy fans are going to go see it no matter what. So if you're a Legacy fan, you're going to go see these things, and then from there you're going to branch off into I love these new ideas, I'm all about them group, or you're jumping into the I hate it group, and more people regulated themselves into I hate that group. A lot more people did than they did for the loved it. So when Beyond came out, most people didn't want to think about the idea of loving that new idea, like that new film. Like it was, the horrificness of what you did in Into Darkness has poisoned me too much. I won't come back to these movies. I hate them. And I think it unfortunately just tanked the Kelvin universe and Star Trek Beyond, which isn't what it deserved. It deserved better because that movie's actually really good. I still remember leaving the theater after watching it the first time, like at the midnight release showing where I got my fucking poster and shit, and I was blown away. You can ask my wife. She was in the car. I was like, that was so good. I can't believe it. It was such a good movie. I was so excited, and then I got online and people were like, this movie sucks. I'm not gonna go see it. All right.
And you know, 2009.
I didn't like 09 when I came out of that.
I first watched online, and you know what I mean. It was what more interested me as a Star Trek fan was, again, it was the new Star Trek fans that were like people that never watched Star Trek were going, "Oh my god, have you seen this new Star Trek? J.J. Abrams, oh, it looks brilliant." And I was like more impressed by everyone going on, bar the Star Trek fans going, "Oh, new Star Trek movie." So, you know, went to see it, and okay, apart from the Enterprise, we discussed with the Enterprise and Vulcan getting destroyed, a few of those gripes. I went, you know, this movie's casted really well. The actors are fantastic. You know, there was so much good elements to take away from 2009. Was I over the moon? Yeah. You know, the old canon Star Trek fan was a little bit angry with some of the stuff, but overall, it wasn't a bad movie. And Star Trek Beyond, I have to say, I came out just flabbergasted. I just went, this is a Radakan. This is a First Contact. It was that good. You know what I mean? If you look at the original series, you got Radakan. If you look at the next gen, you got First Contact, and if you look at the 2009s, you've got Beyond. And
it is a bit by default. I will be honest though. I like Beyond very much. I think it's just, and I like it for its entertainment value. I just don't think it's as well done or made as First Contact or The Wrath of Khan or Star Trek 4.
Yeah, okay, but like you've got a small, you know, we haven't got two more of the
absolutely. That's movie,
but I think this is the biggest problem with the current issues with Star Trek at the moment is it's from 2009. We've got some of the old guard in working on Picard. We've got them working on Discovery, and they still don't know what they want Star Trek to be. It took them a long time to get Discovery right. Like, there was a whole fiasco in season 1. You know what I mean? Like, sets were paid for, designed, costumes were made, and then they lost their executive producer. You know, crazy stuff was done. And Damage Control had to go in and kind of half save the series. And, like, you know, it's noticeable. Like, you could nearly say that halfway through season 1 of Discovery, it's like the second pilot. And you go into the mirror universe, and the show starts picking up. Season 2 has been fantastic, and Discovery's found that. Whether they can stay on course for Season 3 with Discovery like that is perfect. They found what they want. They found their identity for Discovery. But then you go into Picard, and again, it's kind of like, well, we want to appeal for new fans. We want to bring something back for old fans. Like, I just find they're questioning themselves too much. Let's go back to science. Let's go back to writing a show. That's good. Okay, bring it to modern style TV, but work around what you have. They just keep questioning themselves. They don't know what they want. And I heard that there was a lot of rewrites for Picard. Lots of things being done at the last minute. And if you go back and look at season 1 of Picard, it's so obvious. You know what I mean? Like I think myself, Damien kept on laughing about like this, the communication that they were sending. It wasn't a communication. That was a bloody portal. You know what I mean? These advanced sentient AIs that are so bloody clever, they couldn't come true. You know, there was a lot of, and they just keep questioning themselves. And it's, I think sometimes they just need to step back, and think. And when they make a decision, stick with it. And stop in between or halfway through production going, you know what, I don't think this is going to appeal to the new fan. Let's change it. And I think that it has been evident in Picard last season.
Well, I think and this is my speculation, is I think part of what happened with Picard is that they wrote a script, a 10-episode script, and then they started rolling through and getting everything done, and then, the powers that be at Viacom CBS came in and said, oh yeah, and we're going to give you guys a second season. So I need you to rework the ending of this show so that you can set it up for a second season and make that
Didn't need to do that
something.
though. You could do just
Exactly.
like anthology seasons, right?
You don't necessarily need to, but I think that's where they were like, I think they probably sat in a room and they probably had that exact conversation is, can we do a second season of Picard without Patrick Stewart? Because I personally believe that the way that this show was probably geared towards, with all of its very somber, melancholy moments of reflection and redemption, that I think the ending of it was originally written so that he was going to die. I don't think he was supposed to get into a magic body and become a clone of himself. I think that was one of the things they added on to the production, which is, I think, also probably why that whole storyline bit in the last 2 episodes was really rushed and felt kind of came out of nowhere, and it was just, here it is, and then everyone's on the bridge, and, I don't know, 7 and 9 are Raffi are together, just fuck you, Girardi's there, end the show. And they were like, we'll fix it in the second season, because now that we've got one, we can do that later, where we don't necessarily have to figure it out right now in these 10 episodes. So I feel like that was possibly some of the issue there with some of those rewrites or reshoots or however they went about doing it. But yeah,
the Frakes stuff was added in again towards the end. It was a reshoot, with Frakes on the bridge. Like, it was never going to be Frakes on that Armada. So there was a lot of changes done towards the end. Patrick Stewart now for season 1 of Next Generation lived out with Suitcase, so whether he thought, I'm going to come back for the Star Trek fans because they warm my heart, I'm going to give it another go. I can't see it lasting past the season. I'm happy with it enough. I'm out of here. I came back and let CBS do what they want, which is probably what, happy days. We've got a new show running. If we get enough new fans, we get enough interest, happy days. Amazon came along. They obviously snapped it up, paid a lot of money for it, and straight away they went, you've got season 2.
Right. Yes.
Okay, so
and that was midway through filming. They hadn't even finished filming season 1, so I agree completely on that point. I think they had already been greenlit for seasons 2 and 3 well before they expected. There was no measurement of how good the show was, and I do think that actually probably took away from season 1's storyline.
Mm-hmm.
So these teams that we have producing these TV shows, these Discovery and Picard TV shows, do we feel confident enough in them actually helming movies, like actual movies, like regardless of whether they're theatrical releases or video on demand, like streaming service releases? Would you be comfortable with them being the ones responsible for actual movies?
I would say every part of the production except the writing staff is the one I'm I would be supportive of. I think the cinematographers, I think the lighting folks, the sets guys, the production designers, the costumes,
The production
makeup
quality of the shows is impeccable.
I think those folks, that though the overwhelming majority of the production teams would be, I think, perfectly fine transitioning to a theatrical release. Even the directors, whichever director they go with, they're all pretty good. Some of them are better than others, but they're all pretty good. And I
Hanley
just
Culpepper,
think,
give her a movie.
well, I mean, and that's the I don't know. Maybe she would be pretty good at it. I just feel like the writers, the writing is the thing that I would be the most concerned about, because that seems to be the real inconsistent thing through both seasons of Discovery and Picard is ultimately the writing has been at sometimes just groundbreaking and amazing, and then other times it's head scratching and confusing and frustrating.
Now, but is that just the writer's fault, or is that people sticking their nose in when they're saying, nah, you know what? 1 minute they're saying, yeah, that story's great, let's go for it, and then halfway through, you know what? I think, if we take this bit out and we put in a stupid turbo shaft scene and, we'll do all these fancy special cinematic effects.
Yeah.
And we'll just change this and we'll change that. Might that take away from the script writers? I'm getting that impression from Star Trek. I just think there's too many chiefs sometimes stepping in.
Oh yeah, there's like 18 to 21 people that have the title producer. Am I?
But that's not a very uncommon thing. If you look at the amount of producers that are on shows like The Expanse, there's more producers on The Expanse than there are in Discovery. It's not an uncommon thing. But
really,
yeah, if you look at the IMDb profile on it, but
the IMDb profile takes into consideration all like three or four seasons that have since the beginning.
Well, it's a producer, But the thing is I think the difference, though, it depends on the level of power that those producers are given overall on the productions. Because, yes, just because you're a producer doesn't necessarily mean that you have the exact same level of power on each product that you are part of that you are a part of. Where I think in Star Trek, I think you guys make a good point, where those producers have more input than necessarily some of those producers on shows like The Expanse, or like Westworld and stuff like that, where it's much clearer that there's a bit more of a singular vision there by key individuals getting some input, whereas Star Trek right now feels a little bit more committee than anything else.
Yeah, it's
too much of a democracy is what you're saying.
Yeah,
I wouldn't even
say
it's a democracy now, but I do agree there. There's too many. It's like a committee. They're all the top guys are fighting it out for which one of them have the best ideas, taking it away from maybe some of the script writers, taken away from maybe some of the cast where they want to go with the show. And I think what you said there with the likes of Expanse and Westworld is there's a clear vision. There's one person there making a call, and that one person, if the head producer isn't happy with, he's brought into a room, he is given the chance to probably, this is his vision, this is what he's seeing, and head producer can go, well, this is my vision, can you twist it around, can you change it around? And that guy goes back and says, okay, I have to rework this, but I'm going to rework it and make sense. I'm not going to rework it for the sake of reworking it. And then, as Nick said, with some of the storylines, it just doesn't make sense. And I do think...
sorry, go ahead.
There's a lot of appeasing going on. Someone's coming in here trying to change something, and then you're left with, things are running over budget, things are being filmed, and some parts just don't make sense.
Right. A good example, I think, from a Picard perspective is there was and this kind of goes back to there just being too many hands in the pot with having too much influence, which is the very first opening shot in the first episode of Picard. We have the beautiful shot of the Enterprise D, right? And we have that cool pan shot into 10 forward where Data and Picard are playing their card game. There's one group of people that painstakingly recreated the set of 10 forward exactly the way it was inside of the Next Generation to try to make sure that the friggin' upholstery on the floor looked exactly the way it did.
They zoom into a random window.
Meanwhile, you have another person probably sitting there saying, it would be cool if we zoom in shot on this thing and we kind of burn through the window. That would be great. And they just
they get the wrong window.
Right, and then they just threw up some fucking random window, and it doesn't work right because it doesn't match what the windows look like.
Yeah.
Right, it's not 10 forwards windows,
yeah, it's another window.
and it's a totally
forward,
different window.
Isn't it?
Yeah, That's
Deck
the
9,
thing
wasn't it? They went in through. I can't remember was it Deck 9 or Deck 11, but they missed 10. Yeah, they missed it by a deck.
It was 9 side. That was what it was.
Yeah,
it was.
And that's you know, and I think that is one thing that we can. I think everyone, like the old brigade of the Star Trek fan, can turn around, and that is definitely what's missing with Star Trek recently, is that one person, and that's their one job, to turn around and say no, that window shot is wrong. That's not where it is on the ship. This is where you need, and Nick, you said it earlier on, this is where your producers should be working. This producer's responsible for this, and it all lands on him. And if your executive producer comes along and says, I don't like your vision or what way you're going, let them explain it and get their point. But like, that's what's missing. It's the simple little things like that. Like, does the visual effects team have too much control themselves of what they do? It seems that way. Like Picard, like, a lot of stock footage was used through Picard, and that's a little bit disappointing, because Star Trek was always known for these incredible visuals, and on a shoestring budget. Has this new visual effects team, like that just baffles me. You know what I mean? That
I would say that Star Trek has a history in terms of the shows. They have gotten away with some really breathtaking visuals and also some really shoddy visuals. Like just to be fair, like sometimes they do some things that are, wow, this is crazy that they were doing this for the budget, and then other times you're like, that is really cheap, and you just recycle that shot, or you're just rotating the planet in a different direction. That's the same planet you used in the past 5 episodes.
Star Trek has always recycled their own stuff. They haven't just gone and jacked stuff from the internet or like old viral videos from YouTube.
Exactly.
That was a bit.
And then
honestly,
actually,
it was a bit insulting.
In fairness, and that's one great point, because this is where this is where I would be annoyed with the visual team. And a friend of mine, he's great at 3D modeling, he's great at photo editing, the whole lot. And like, it was just like, how lazy was it, like, for Star Trek Picard to tie in all the time Discovery shuttles? Now, I'm not going to get too caught up in them because we're taxis, and okay, fair enough, they're an old shuttle, and yeah, you could see that. Yeah, realistically, is that too far-fetched? No, it's not too far-fetched, but at the same time, is how hard would it have been for them to use some of the old visual effects from other Star Trek series like Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and just get a shuttle and just crop it in to the Picard? That would have fitted better than reusing Discovery stuff. I know they're trying to say it's cheap, but the worst insult was the fact that they just went out and bought visuals, and not do anything. That to me was just a cop out and lazy.
I agree. I mean,
lazy.
It's embarrassing. It is embarrassing, especially when you consider the location. As far as I can remember, the location with which they used all of the stock footage that they went out and acquired was the admonition, which was such a key element to the plot of the show. It was something that we all were very interested in, that a lot of us broke down frame by frame to see what the hell was going on in all these super fast half-second visuals. Right, and what's crazy too is, even in the one where they reused the silver android-looking people, like these silver, in like business suits, right? In that, they have that shot, and then the next shot is this badass assembly of a robot that's happening. That's a completely, self-generated digital, product that they made in-house. That's got all, it's like building the robot with all the tubes and all that. And it's like, why did you even include that quarter of a second shot of the other androids? Why just don't fucking put it in there? You know what I mean? Like it's like, I can excuse the Fox one where it was the decomposing thing. It's like, yeah, whatever. You didn't want to fucking decompose a fox. Whatever. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, I get that. But it's crazy to me that they intentionally added some of these bizarre elements for literally no reason, because they didn't even need to put it in there. There was no reason to put it in there at all. It was it was bizarre. It was bizarre and embarrassing.
I'm going to try and tie this back into, because you guys were talking about Stargate earlier on, like when we started this off. Mm-hmm. And the example I had in mind is Babylon 5, right? Babylon 5 had a lot of a lot of seasons, and then it did movies, and all of these movies were TV movies. And some of them, you like them, you don't like them, they're good, they're not good, but they all feel like TV productions. They don't necessarily feel like theatrical releases. I'm a bit afraid that if we have Star Trek movies coming out today, but that are video on demand releases, I'm a bit afraid that they're gonna feel like, or at least before I came into this discussion, I was afraid that they would feel too much like TV production. But now I kind of get the feeling that we all agree that they will look amazing, or like as good as a movie. But if the story or if the writing remains the same, it will still be kind of mediocre writing, and that's the big problem.
Yeah, like I think when Babylon 5 is a great one to bring up, and I think again, if you look at it, the reasons why they didn't go into cinema is because they knew it wouldn't be worthwhile to make a Babylon 5 movie that would be a success in the box office. They knew that straight off the bat. But at the same time well, hang on, where do you make money? Well, grand, you sell it to a TV company because you have people sitting at home watching it. And then the second thing was videos and DVDs. Sales. Cha-ching was money at the time. Yeah, the script writing, I don't necessarily, I think there's some heavy, very good script writing going on. There just seems to be, from the recent new Star Trek, it seems to have that 2009 problem where there just seems to be, I think we said it, there just seems to be a committee involved, too many people involved in changing up something. I don't think they're confident enough when they have something that's laid out, initially planned, and we say, this is a plan for, say, our Discovery TV movie. Are they going to change 5 or 6 things? And I think they will. Instead of sitting back saying, we've got Discovery in production, now's the time for one or two of those busybody producers, in my opinion, to start going off and looking at a Discovery movie. Start looking for a writer. Start bashing out ideas for a storyline, and take their time and work on it. As opposed to, let's get season 3 done, season 4 done, and let's come up with a movie last minute, and then this committee all throws back down together, and everyone wants to have their input on how this is going, because everyone wants the credit, because it's Hollywood, because, a ship wasn't designed by one person, it was designed by like 20, 30, 40 people, which we know that's not true, but everyone wants to it's typical Hollywood, I did this, I did that, I did it. Everyone's trying to get in and get their say on stuff. Stop it. Jesus, there's no clear vision. There's too many people trying to go in with their vision. There's too many people trying to get their say, is what I think is the biggest problem. Just plan it.
I agree with what you're saying. Yeah, I think that if they decide to go the route of the movie, 2 big things need to happen. One is a very strong, talented director needs to be put in charge of that product to combat those busybody producers. And the other thing, too, is they cannot, in my opinion, recycle an idea that they wrote out that could have easily become the 4th season of Discovery.
Yeah.
I don't want them sitting in that room where
ironically
they're like,
is a thing that Star Trek has done very often. Star Trek has very often recycled ideas from shows, turned them into movies, and vice versa.
Well, that was Gene more so.
It is a Star Trek thing.
That was Gene Roddenberry going back in early carnation where some of his ideas were shot down. And
I would argue that most of Enterprise is recycled ideas from TNG, Voyager, and Deep Space Nine.
Right. I mean, it is. Mm-hmm. They are recycled ideas, but I go back, like we were talking about earlier, like some of the better movies, right? And in terms of just widespread acceptance, the 2 best Star Trek movies
First
that majority of First Contact and Wrath of Khan, right? Okay. Those do not feel like episodes of television, and whether they started like that or not is irrelevant. But I think for this style of team that we have right now that's helming this stuff, I don't think that they would be good at adapting something that was written for a 2-parter episode into a film. I think it's going to feel too much like what happened with the Stargate things. It's going to look really great, but it's going to still come across as, well, that was a really great 2-parter episode I just watched edited together.
Okay, so you think that like the opening 2 episodes of Discovery, they are 2 episodes of TV that almost feel like a movie, and that's awesome. but if they were presented as a movie, they would feel like a weak movie.
Yes.
Weak movie, yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Yes. Yeah, that's
That's
how
cool.
I would feel.
I also have a question regarding the Oscars, essentially. Because there's this big debate about whether Netflix films and what have you, because there was this whole debacle about Roma. Roma was nominated for Best Picture, and that was a Netflix-released picture, and I think it did get a US, because you need to have your movie released in a certain amount of theaters in the US for it to be accepted at the Academy Awards.
I think...
If
know
you
where you're
start
going.
releasing movies just on streaming services, then do you take away Star Trek's opportunity from being in it, like at the Oscars and in those big discussions? Because we see more and more of these. Because Star Trek or films like science fiction, they used to not really win awards for best performance.
Chances
or that
are
kind
they
of
never
stuff.
will. It's
I
rare.
disagree.
The Oscars is
I disagree.
Oscars is an old boys club.
But
and
now
I'm
you
sorry,
have things
they
like
haven't.
Joker coming in, which still is a comic book movie, and that's making waves, right? And
Because
I think
cinema has changed a lot, and the viewers that are going to the cinema now and the ones that are making the most is like, if you look at the Marvel and all that, they're the big blockbuster hits, and the Oscars have to kind of look and take that into account. They're an old boys club. They're very strict on their rules. It's, you know what I mean? There's question marks over previous award winners. Sometimes they get it right, sometimes they don't. To be honest with you, look,
you don't think it matters.
if you're the Oscars and you want to give the best award to the best film, all platforms should be included. You know, they are like, look, they're the elite when it comes to film awards, and if they want to consider themselves to be the elite, why aren't they not considering any kind of movie? That's what it should be. I'm not saying low budget, like, okay, have a criteria there, but if okay, say we get a Star Trek Discovery movie and they spend X amount of money, and there has to be criteria, say production wise, maybe cast wise or something like that, like whatever, they can set criterias, but it doesn't have to be cinema. It doesn't have to be released in the cinema. I think Oscars have always drove me mad for a long time. It just, to me, it's funny. And then the gas thing as well, have you ever noticed that, when it comes around to just before the Oscars, that magically enough, you know, all of a sudden, like, copies of movies that haven't even hit the cinema become available for downloading very, very easy. And that's one thing that just shows where, you know, the companies are thinking more, look, we don't really care about how much money we make for this movie, we want an Oscar. And you know what I mean, they're being leaked, deliberately leaked, so there's a hype about a movie to win an Oscar. Look, Oscars, really, to me, I think if you want to give a best award, you know, all platforms should count. Like, you can put an Oscar in there for, like, best Netflix movie, original movie, or best Amazon. You know, there's nothing hard.
think that the Oscars and some of the other award shows need to concern themselves with staying relevant beyond just the concept of awarding streaming movies. I think the poor ratings of the Oscars year end after year end, it really care about what movie wins Best Picture, other than to say, why the hell did you pick that movie? Why didn't you pick my movie? Because my movie was a better idea. You know, in terms of a fan saying that, you know, like, why would you pick that movie? That movie wasn't that good. This one was much better. And I think that they need to concern themselves with staying as relevant as possible. So I think if they want to keep being elitist, as Chris was saying, and kind of exclude the more modern formats, especially right now, if this whole isolation thing is teaching us anything, it's that people are more than willing to pay a little bit of money to watch a brand new theatrical release film at their house. And if they want to continue to exclude those kinds of concepts from awards considerations, then they're going to continue to fade into further obscurity. And ultimately, just nobody's going to care.
All right, so you guys reckon that, like, Star Trek not getting theatrical releases and then not being able to kind of get any of these awards that won't affect the reception of the projects at all?
I think Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I like it. To me, Star Trek Oscar. If Star Trek got an Oscar, it's great. But No, not necessarily. I think sci-fi has 9 times out of 10 literally pretty much accepted it. It's and I think any sci-fi fan, when a sci-fi film gets something for special visuals, costumes, I think the whole sci-fi community is over the moon.
True.
When a film gets it, regardless whether you like the film or not. It's just recognition for sci-fi. But I think as a science fiction fan, the Oscars really have never concerned me with sci-fi.
All right.
I agree. I think that from Viacom CBS's standpoint, awards are cool, you know, but money's better. And if they're making money, I don't think they really care. Ultimately, and again, I go back to where the culture is at right now with the current generations that are going out to see movies as opposed to the older generation that may not be. The younger generation doesn't care. They do not care that this movie won Best Picture. Nobody cares. It may have made more sense 40 years ago when the life cycle of films was wildly different, where it was these movies came out in the theaters, and then after a year they would magically appear and edited on, TNT or TBS or whatever the hell it is, and that was the life cycle. But now, there are so many movies out there.
3
There's
years,
so much shit.
Your life cycles, you're spot on. I'd say it was about 3 years. Year cinema, be in the cinema for about 2 to 3 months. Then you had your VHS or DVD, and then you had it again. Then probably 3 years after it came out in the cinema, on TV. So that's a movie that's lasting 3 years. Like science fiction movies will not hang around for 3 years. As much as we'd love to say, Radakan, 3 years, big deal. It won't happen, and cinema has changed so much, and that's a great point that you've made there. You know what I mean? And that's realistically, if you go back 10, 15 years ago, that was, that was your cinema. Cinema. Year later, DVD, then a year later after that, TV. And it was a big Christmas thing, you know what I mean? When it got finally televised for the first time, it was like, it was prime time, it was, and like, how much money did the movie companies make from agreeing rights to television companies to show them, to have, we're getting the premiere of this movie.
Right, and they would use the awards in a lot of ways to gauge. People would use them to help gauge whether they should bother to tune in and make sure they were there at 7:30, based off of what the TV guide book said for them to be there at. Based on, it's the one Best Picture, we've got to see it. But now it's like, I'll watch it later. I'll watch it whenever. I don't care which one won a Best Picture, because I'll watch that while I'm cooking my, Blue Apron meal and, not paying attention to what the hell's going on. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make the same level of
YouTube
impact.
fashion.
Right, but that's the thing is, like, people, it doesn't have the same level of impact. So I don't think, ultimately, I think it's cool. I think Chris hit it right on the head. Like, when science fiction films win these awards for, like, visual effects or makeup or costumes or sets, like, those are great. But ultimately, like, no, the idea of winning Best Picture is not, I think, on their mind, because what they really want is money. And if they're making money, that's all that really matters. That's all that matters.
Okay, so to end this, how do you guys feel about a streaming service release? Do you guys think it's not that bad? Does it cheapen the release of Star Trek movies, or is it fine?
I think, to be honest with you, the way technology's gone these days and how everything goes, and I think with CBS and the way they organise conventions, to be honest with you, I have no issue. I just want a good storyline. I think, as we all said, visuals, like, for the majority of it, effects and all that, it's very cinematic. And 9 times out of 10, if it was just released, like, most of us have at least one large TV. We've got the surround sound. We've got all the key aspects in our homes these days. And the great thing is, like, with the likes of CBS, as much as you can turn around and give out with them sometimes, but they do arrange good conventions. I was at the William Shatner Radakan thing, which was very, very good. The only thing I'd say is, when they come up to, wanting to do a show, they can then cinematically put it on a large screen, just have a decent version, you know what I mean, have it up to 4K or whatever the you know, whatever the best quality is, they can do that and then have a guest talk afterwards. So I don't think you're going to miss much. You know what I mean? You can watch it in the comfort of your home, and then hopefully a year or two later. And like I could actually, honestly, as we all said, like they like making money. And you know, if you say had Jonathan Frakes direct, say Star Trek: The Discovery movie, that's live streaming. Say 2 years down the line, you put that on tour, a CBS tour, where Jonathan Frakes goes to Dublin, he goes to Germany, he goes all around the world, tour, put it in a cinema. You know what I mean? You're gonna have a lot of Trekkies that are going to be over the moon that enjoyed that movie. You're going to get to watch it on a big screen in a cinema with Trekkies. And I have to say one thing, it was actually great seeing Radakan full of enthusiastic fans for that movie.
That's a fantastic
The atmosphere
idea,
is, the hairs stand on the back of your head. When everyone's cheering at the opening sequence for the Radakan, like I never felt the likes of it, which is fantastic. So I'm for it. I am absolutely for it. If it's done right, they can make money of us fans, because I know we will. You know, if you get someone like Jonathan Frakes talking for about half an hour, 45 minutes after that show, yeah, you know, I'm in. I'd happily watch it. I might for the tour to come around a year or two later.
Yeah, I actually, you know, Chris, while you were talking, just for the record, I have no problems with it either, but, you know, while you were talking, it actually made me think to myself, someone's actually already done this. And the business model actually already perfectly exists very well, and it was a Trek production, and it was What We Left Behind, the DS9 documentary, where they had the Fandango, Fathom, you know, special events where if you wanted to go see it in theaters, you absolutely could.
Yeah.
So they could bring in that crowd. They had the digital sales, they had physical sales, and they had it so you could stream it, and it was all released in a very positive timeline, in a way that it was phased in a way where you didn't have to wait long enough to just straight up pirate it, you know, where if you missed the theatrical release, the physical copy would either arrive very quickly or the digital copy would be available relatively quickly after the theatrical release, so you didn't have to worry about pirating it, and it was just there. And that, I think, that business model already exists. It's proven, and they made good money on that.
And it was done very, very well, as you said.
Right.
Like, you had literally any of the fan backers initially. They had we were the first to watch it. You had, I think, a 7-day window to log in and watch it.
Yeah.
You knew the quality wasn't going to be the
done it
highest, but like, yeah,
Yes.
and
Yes, exactly.
You weren't going to get the highest quality, and everything was warned for you there. Then the next stage of it was the theatrical, the premieres. And they were fantastic. I went to the one at Birmingham. It was meant to be in London. It got moved to coincide with DST. We had Ira Stevens there. We couldn't have any of the cast there because they were signed up for DST. But Ira alone being there, introduced, like, just the warm welcome of coming into the cinema and seeing him, you know, was absolutely fantastic. And we got to sit in a cinema and see it on high quality, great surround sound, and plus as well, we were in a room with Deep Space Nine fans, and there's a lot to be said to that than just sitting in a random cinema and you know, you have the 3 or 4 idiots that are don't like this and decide to ruin the whole movie.
You bring up a good point about the fans there, because I went and saw it here in DC at the theaters, and you're right, it is a different experience when you know that everybody that was in there, and it was, I would say, probably 70% full for my showing, and you know that every person in there is a diehard either Deep Space Nine fan or Star Trek fan. Everybody was laughing at all the jokes. They got all the references. They were enjoying the experience. Everybody was having a great time.
Same for me.
Right. It was just fun to be a part of that experience. And I think if they did something like that with a streaming style film where they released it in a similar way, I think that would be gangbusters. That would be great. Yeah, that would be perfect.
You get the best. You get the best sitting at home and watching it, and then, as I said, and then like if you can do the like one, it's a theatrical release. It's small. It's in certain cinemas. Exactly what they did for What We Left Behind was absolutely well done. Select cinemas, brilliant. Because I went to 2 or 3 premieres actually, and I went to the one in Dublin as well, and it was fantastic as well. Not taken away from anything from Birmingham. Yeah, we had Ira Stephen Bear, which was brilliant. The one in Dublin, we didn't have anybody, but it was still just as good. And there you go. You know, it's a win-win.
Well, here in Quebec, we had no one from the cast or crew either. So it was just a bunch of people, and it was maybe 50% full. But we're not Montreal. We're a small town next to Montreal. but it was still 50% full, and everyone was there. Everyone bloody cried when Aaron Eisenberg talked about the leg. Everyone laughed at all the jokes, and you could really feel
there's an energy. There was an energy in the room.
Specific energy, yeah.
Right.
Okay, so this is it. We've found the business model.
And
this is
again,
it.
Going back to, as I said recently, with William Shatner's tour of the Rat of Khan, Star Trek 2, again, it's even the hype, like that one was done in the Bord Gáis Energy Centre, so it wasn't so much as a cinema. But again, you're going in, you're having a few drinks, and the minute you walk in the door, you recognise faces. Because, as you said, like Dublin is large, but it's not that large. So, there's a community of Star Trek fans. So you go in and you're meeting faces that you're having a chat. There's this whole excitement building up to the show. the 10 seconds of being in the What We Left Behind documentary, yeah, cool.
You're signing copies and everything.
I haven't signed any copies yet, but it's just that buzz. But like as I said, like the minute I knew what it was for the whole Deep Space Nine thing, but like to see an old classics, and just it was electrifying. The room, the atmosphere, just it makes it, and I'd pay 10, 15, maybe €20 more to go to a cinema or a venue like that than I would go down to my local UCI cinema or Odeon cinema and just watch a Star Trek movie
because
for the
it's
first
an
time
experience,
at 12 o'clock. It
right.
is, and it's great
event.
seeing some of that community. It's for the Star Trek fan, and yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with Nick. I think Irish Stephen Bear and the guys that worked on the What You Left Behind documentary, which was done in Paramount, they did it themselves with fan backing, but it was done in like I was lucky enough. I did a tour with Larry Nemeczek and in Paramount Studios, and we actually got to gate crash into his office, and that was just because I was wearing one of the fan back t-shirts. One of the lads just kind of like looked at the door, they heard us talking, and they seen me wearing the Garrick t-shirt. I went, oh my god, you're wearing one of our t-shirts. So we got to come in and we seen, they had a small room, they were working around fan backed, but they've done the perfect business model. I think that's absolutely, if you want to stream it, but the hard work's been done, and I do think it's the way forward, and I don't think any Star Trek fan would mind that.
Well,
I agree.
You guys are the best. I wasn't sold on a streaming only Star Trek project movie originally, but now I'm all for it. I think that as you guys say, if the story's right, we already have the production quality in our shows. Just release the movie on video on demand platforms, and then do like a kind of world tour later on, and us Star Trek fans will go and see it, and there's money to be made.
Yeah, and the great thing about it is they'll know from the success. Like Netflix has a great way of tracking how successful something is. So what I mean. Those reports going back to CBS saying, okay, no point doing a world tour with that. This first Discovery movie didn't really do too well. It did good enough to do another one, which you don't have to worry about then all of a sudden box office sales. The main thing is how many times it's getting viewed.
Dangerous, yeah.
And has been the death of literally 2009 Star Trek. Are we going to see another one? It's very hard. I can't see it happening now because it's been left too long. But box office receipts kills movies.
Well, it killed the
this
TNG.
Way.
Because I would expect they were probably planning more TNG movies. This wasn't supposed to be the end one. It just happened to be such a flop that it ended everything.
But again, they just wasn't properly thought out. It's kind of like, hang on, whoever came up with the idea for that one obviously watched too many Star Trek movies and just kind of like copied and paste, let's swap out the baddie. You know what I mean? And Star Trek movies have been very, very guilty of that because they're trying to appease for the new fan. But no, I just think, there's just so much there. Like, come here, if you have a Discovery movie that is crap, will that affect another Discovery movie? Probably not, because once they get one that's really, really good, chances are people will stay faithful and give them a chance, and that's all you want to get. You want to get people to watch them. And yeah, you know what I mean. Like for the cinema, you got to think as well. Like long term with a cinema, to get a movie into a cinema, like how many times is it going to be shown a day? what size is the cinema, like the capacity. You got to think that, they're the things that affect, will you get another movie? So there's no point, Star Trek movie going out for being in the cinema for 2 months, and maybe 2 weeks of it being aired fills 2 cinemas fully. It's all that comes into account. But like, people at their own leisure watching at home can dramatically change the way, and I do think it's the way to go.
Okay, awesome. I'm sold. I want it now. I'm good. All right, thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you guys so much for we basically solved. We came up with a business model in an hour.
Irish Stephen Bear, I think, is the one.
Yeah,
well, that's true. All we did was just say he did it right. Yeah,
he did it right.
And Kai and all the other guys that worked on What We Left Behind, and what a dedicated crew actually was lucky enough to meet.
I think it's like, okay. I no shade on any of the other Star Trek documentaries because I love them all, but that was the best. That was the best Star Trek documentary.
It had the most personality. I felt it felt very human, very real.
And that's the thing that we're keen into, where we're saying this was done solely for the love of Deep Space Nine. So when you think about if you're going to do a Star Trek movie down the line, it's done for the Star Trek fan and the new fans that like it. So, as much as you're saying you're trying to get in new fans, if you have a fandom, and I think Discovery has done really well at that, and you give them a movie, it's only going to get stronger.
Yeah.
And
if
you're
you
releasing
fill a room
it just
with trickies, whether they're new trickies or old trickies, you fill a room with trickies.
You're doing something for them, and it should be successful. But it just depends on the criteria, the writing, and so forth, like that. Everything that we pointed out earlier on. So, I do think it will work.
Okay, guys. Well, thank you so much for being here. You guys have YouTube channels and what have you. I don't usually promote this stuff. I just leave a link in the description so you guys can check that out. And yeah, so live long and prosper, and leave a comment if you're listening to this and tell us what you think. See you guys.